Chairman, and I'd like to thank the gentleman from Pennsylvania. I think he's hitting on a critically important point about imposing unilateral commitments on ourselves, and it opens up, I think, an important philosophical question for you, Mrs. Gottemuller. If we were to comply with the INF and they were to continue violating the INF, do we have a treaty at all?
I think one thing it's important to recall, sir, is that there are a number of countries who are parties to this treaty, 11 countries in addition to the Russian Federation and the United States. And so it's an entire treaty system that extends across Eurasia. So I think in our efforts, and I mentioned this earlier, it's very important to continue to press the Russians to come back into compliance with the treaty. If somehow we left the treaty, then it would essentially be giving them a free ride to do whatever they well please. So I think it is important to say that they are in violation, that there's a problem. They're not abiding by their treaty commitments, and not give them a free ride.
So if we were to pull out of the INF earlier, you mentioned that would make legal their illegal actions. Is that correct?
Correct.
So currently they are in violation of the law.
Correct.
And that is going to supposedly encourage them to get back in compliance with the law.
I think if international law means anything to the Russian Federation, they should be considering that matter. What
did international law have to say about the invasion and occupation of South Ossetia, for example?
Well, I said in the outset of my remarks, of my testimony,
quick,
that we're gravely concerned about.
What did international law say about the invasion and occupation of Abkhazia?
We're very concerned
What did international law say about the invasion and occupation of Crimea?
We're very concerned about all those matters.
At what point does the international law mean anything as long as we continue to allow them to violate international law?
I think, sir, that the important thing is that the structure of international law provides for global security and stability overall. And because there are violations out there, and in the case of Crimea, you pointed to this very strong example on the current scene, that Russia has violated the territorial integrity and sovereignty of Ukraine by coming into Crimea and by, bringing their troops into eastern Ukraine as well. But that doesn't mean, that we do away with the OSCE principles or the UN Charter. The system of law, it's important to maintain it in place.
So do you personally
as a way to go after countries that then violate?
If we let's say we have bilateral commitment with Russia, bilateral commitment, and they're in violation. The question is, do we continue to impose unilateral commitments upon ourselves that hinder us but enable them to continue to progress?
I think the important thing, sir...
Just yes or no. Do you think we should do that? Philosophically, do you think we should impose commitments upon ourselves that hinder our ability while they're continuing to progress?
In this case, the answer is yes, to stay within the treaty, and then to look at what countermeasures we have available. Mr. McEwen already mentioned we have a number of military countermeasures that stay within the realm of the treaty.
Okay, so I've got a minute and a half left. Mr. McEwen, we're talking about cruise missiles here. What type of ability do we have as a nation militarily to provide early warning to our friends and allies in Europe that these missiles may be engaged?
Sir, we could talk in more detail in closed session about our military capabilities in Europe. I don't want to advertise for the Russians what capabilities we have in Europe. Obviously, with short or intermediate range missiles closer to Europe's and NATO's borders leads to shorter warning time, and you have to have adequate sensors to have point defense. So we have some capabilities. I don't want to overstate what those are.
And then as far as the ability to hold at risk targets, do we have that ability?
Yes.